All right, everybody, welcome to another dual review between me and Corey. And we are talking today about the game Batbarian. This game is a Metroidvania, but a lot of unique aspects to it have been added in. I think that's my favorite part of this game, just the uniqueness of some of these things. So some of the stuff. There's a little bat that follows you around. You throw fruit to get it to go where you want to go, and later on you can switch its elemental type and things of that nature. That is one. Well, I guess that's why it's called Batbarian, right? Other reason is that you are a barbarian as your character. So let's talk about the gameplay for a little bit. Speaking of throwing fruit to a bat here. You throw items by holding down or releasing the right stick on the switch. That is where I personally played this game, and you do have to rely on the bat for progression puzzles. Uh, and most of the upgrades that you get in this game are not to the character themselves, but to the bat, and getting different types of fruit to get the bat to do different things, if you will, and also some allies that have some attacks themselves. But we'll get into that a little later. The game does take a bit of getting used to, I will say that, because, well, kind of multitasking with this bat going around, things like that. And there is a nice thing control wise on the Switch, at least I'm imagining on PC as well. And there's an alternative jump button. Because on the Switch, you're using the right stick to fling the fruit and these stones that you can also throw. You can't really jump with B very easily if you have to throw something in the air. So the addition of being able to use another button to jump helped a lot. Some other things, health is not just one heart, 0.5 heart damage. It's kind of more of a meter, and it can go into smaller increments. Same with the boss's health too, even though they had different skulls representing their health bar. You could take fractions off of the skulls and things. And like I said, you do get allies that join you that do give you additional moves and attacks by spending their energy. And you do refill those, the ability to use them by attacking enemies and damaging them that way. There's a lot of secret rooms in this game as well. And many of the rooms you can just go through and not solve the puzzles to progress. But if you want more, you can attempt some of the puzzles and get yourself some extra loot or uh, extra secrets to discover and whatnot. But so it kind of lets you put in how much you want to put into it, which I don't know, I kind of liked it. Kind of like that idea. This puzzle's too hard. Well, I just move on. I just want to see the story or whatever, or I want to solve every puzzle. Corey, what are some of your thoughts on the gameplay here?
Well, to quickly jump in on that last point of yours, after talking to Blob and Fletcher the other day, it was actually really neat to hear how there were smart design decisions that went into the map creation. A lot of the puzzles are put at kind of like a dead end in the road. So that means that they're completely optional. You can either skip them, or if you feel up to the task and the challenge at the time, go for it. Um, I really like the way that they handle that, because I know that some games require you to solve puzzles as you go along the main path. And what happens then is when you come back to that room to either backtrack or move to the next area, you got to solve the puzzle again, or similar situations. So I really like the way that they handled that as far as designing the overall map and making sure that you didn't get stuck if you ran across a puzzle that you had either no interest or no idea how to solve at the time. It never really felt like you would stall out. The other thing that I wanted to touch upon too, the NPC movements. This was also NPC allies that you could run across and acquire to your party. this was something that we also talked about with Blob and Fletcher. As a design philosophy, I respect what they did, where the general principle is to make your barbarian feel like a barbarian the entire time. So there are very limited abilities that the barbarian will acquire. And this is what Retrogue was talking about at the very beginning, where it takes a bit to get used to. It's not very traditional in the sense that you will acquire abilities that make map traversal easier or completely change how you approach the game. A lot of the upgrades and abilities are very subtle in the way that they do allow you to access new areas, but it's not going to completely transform your experience. And alongside that, so the allies that you do get, you never actually, they have special abilities. And I think I would have liked it a little bit more for the sake of having fun, that the barbarian has the ability to do X instead of having to rely upon an NPC that can only do that action a limited amount of times before you had to refill that ability. But like I said, I do respect it as the design decision, and it does remain consistent throughout. So I really do appreciate that.
Yeah, I agree with those points. I think it was very interesting concept that they decided to, you know, make yourself the barbarian throughout and just put the give the abilities elsewhere. Let's talk about the movement for a bit, though. I did feel like it was a little slippery, and that kind of made platforming kind of harder. I felt it wasn't the tightest of movement, I guess I should say, but I mean, it wasn't like unplayable or anything like that. But I did notice some of the platforms are a little small, and I missed some of them.
Yeah, I had the same sentiments throughout, where the platforming could have been a little tighter. It was very interesting that one of the first upgrades that you got was the boots that allows you to run. And I almost never used the option to slow my character down. Maybe that would have helped me to stay on some of those ledges if I was just moving slower. That said, there were some jumps where you needed to be almost pixel perfect to run and jump across a wide gap.
Yeah, let's talk about the character leveling up from defeating enemies or discovering new areas a little bit. The level up system is unique as well. There's more of a roulette style upgrade wheel that pops up when you do level up, as opposed to just giving you X amount of attack plus or X amount of defense up or whatnot. And you can increase your attack, defense, or awareness. And awareness in this game is another unique concept. It is a little ring of light around your character, and you can grow it to see more of the screen, which it hides a lot of the screen. In which case, you gotta explore that room individually. But as far as this roulette style upgrade wheel, I think I would have preferred a more traditional leveling system. But the wheel was slow enough that you could usually get what you wanted to stop on. So it was kind of like a skill based aspect to it, to the leveling up. I would mostly just upgrade attack and defense, though. What are your thoughts on that system?
I like it. It was different from anything that I've ever really played. Most of the standard fare out there is every time you level up in an RPG like system, you just get a stat buff across the board, or you can kind of pick and choose what character tree that you want to follow. And while I do appreciate those systems, this was a nice, fun departure from that. And it kind of feels like the theme for Batbarian is to not necessarily go against the grain for a lot of the tropes and cliches that Metroidvania has to offer or that you see repeatedly. But this was a nice departure from it. And so it is what it is. I had fun with it. I don't know that I would enjoy to see that in a ton of Metroidvania games, but it was a nice little fun thing to include for this title.
Let's talk about the difficulty options for a little bit. So, I thought this game it gets rather difficult. Yeah, pretty quick, actually. There are assist options, though, that you can turn on, which I will admit I did. um, some of these, like attack up, defense up, and slowing down time when throwing, that one was pretty helpful. Corey, your thoughts on these?
I gotta say that when I played on Switch and I played in handheld mode exclusively. And it's either a problem with the size of my hands and the Joy Cons, but it was very difficult for me to manage throwing fruit accurately and platforming at the same time. So the slowdown time while throwing the various fruits and stones that you acquire, that was almost the only way that I could complete certain sections of the game. So just be aware of that if you're playing on Nintendo Switch.
Another thing that it's somewhat difficulty related, I suppose. I do like the fact that enemies respawn after being 2 rooms away and not just one. Games you get knocked back a room and then all the enemies are back there and then you gotta kill them all again, and that was very helpful. I felt, and it wasn't really so much of a game where I would farm enemies to level up or anything like that. So there was no downside really in my mind to having this system set up that way. And then there's also these campfires in the game that teleporting helps out a lot and makes a lot map traversal backtracking much quicker, as many of you know that have played Metroidvanias, and thankfully you can do that at campfires in addition to the saving. Do you have any thoughts on these topics, Corey?
Well, in complete contrast to the last game that we covered, Cathedral, where enemies did respawn after moving one room away, this was a welcoming change. I got a little agitated sometimes when I would get knocked back one more screen and then I'd have to go kill everything again in Cathedral. So having, you know, by the time you move 2 rooms away, you've kind of committed, okay, I need to go this way. Or even if you get knocked back accidentally, it's not like you have to restart the whole room. So that's a really cool feature, at least for someone like me who's kind of a casual and I like to enjoy, all the sights and everything that the game has to offer, and not necessarily there to, have my butt kicked and get better at the game.
Certainly. And visually, is pixel art style. I did think that the characters and the enemies were a bit on the smaller side. It does allow for rooms for bigger puzzles. However, I think they could have been a little bit smaller. The room sizes, or and the characters bigger and the enemies a little bit bigger. Some things were very hard to see, such as switches, pressure pads, and whatnot. It made some of the puzzles hard to figure out just by pure lack of seeing some important aspect of the puzzle. However, I do respect the fact that it would have been it made the exploration of the room more of a concept aspect that they were going for. I guess I could see that. And you can only see as far as that light aura around your character, which made you have to, traverse the room itself a little bit more.
Yeah, I agree. And this is something that I mentioned a little bit ago, that I really do like the concept of being in the dark and having to rely upon your bat, Pip, to illuminate the surrounding areas. And you stand in certain rooms and you try to get your bearings and understand where different switches are, and you have to work through the process in your head. I did have a few moments of frustration where I just felt like I was standing in a room just throwing fruit all over to illuminate different areas before I could actually take action and jump and platform and get to the action elements of the game. So I do wonder if there were, either a wider radius for Pip's illumination, or at least maybe the character you could have a little bit more awareness, which is the stat that you need to actually have more visibility of each map. That said, I do appreciate that there was no scrolling within a screen. I like that fixed camera, if you will, and it made, each room feel like it was nothing that you couldn't overcome or that you never got lost within a room. I know that sometimes in a Metroidvania, one screen is gigantic and it scrolls back and forth, and you got to work your way all the way through these various things. This one, what you see is what you get, and that really does help with trying to get your bearings when you first step into an area.
Yeah, that
And
fixed room was nice.
yeah, Now that said, even with a fixed room and having some of those switches were very hard to find because you had to get into certain spots to even be able to throw something to hit the switch. And with limited visibility, the Joy-Con precision, that's why I had to turn on the slow motion aiming.
Yeah, and also the map itself, it was very colorful. It made rooms and transitions in rooms very easy to see. The ability to place red exclamation marks to mark off rooms and um, some other marker symbols as well. Definitely a help in Metroidvanias. Let's talk about the dialogue for a bit. So it doesn't really affect the story at all, but they did put in some rather humorous dialogue choices. You had dialogue choices for 3 or 4 to select from, and some of them just kind of made you go like, "What the heck? Wow, let's pick that one."
I liked them. I thought some of them were very witty. I do have one. Not it's not even really a complaint, or it's just more of a question of for some of the dialogue options, since they didn't matter, maybe just for future iterations of the game or the franchise to just give you like have the barbarian come up with something witty, and because at the end of the day you pick one of three funny things and it doesn't really matter. So it I guess if you want to add that again, maybe have it tie in somehow to how people respond to you, or besides just changing text. But that would just be a suggestion. It doesn't really impact my enjoyment of the game.
All right, let's talk about the puzzles for a little bit. There was numerous puzzles. I thought a lot of them were very creative. However, I don't want to say I got sick of them, but there's a lot of them. And like I said earlier, you didn't have to do them all. But me being a completionist, well, I kind of felt like if I got into a new room, I had to do the puzzle. So, what are your thoughts on the puzzles, Corey?
I liked a lot of them. There were just a handful where it was a bit too much for me. Again, playing on a Nintendo Switch and handheld, very challenging to switch between fruits, throw the flute, move from platform to platform, and manage your bat ability all at the same time. That was very challenging for me. So I respect those who can do it without the assist, but for me, I really had to turn on the slow mo aiming just because of the lack of precision on the platform of my choice.
Yeah. So that is our dual review of Batbarian. Actually, in this one, we agreed on a lot of things, as opposed to the last review where we kind of had a little bit of differing opinions on things. But yeah, if you guys want to check out a unique Metroidvania, I would suggest you give Batbarian a try. It's currently on Steam and Switch. And yeah, let me know in the comments what you guys think. What you guys think other games you'd like to have covered. And with that being said, everybody have a good night, good morning, enjoy your games. Thanks for watching, and hopefully we'll see you guys again next time. Goodbye, everybody.